All right, I'm back from the grocery store and I'm getting ready to pull off the edge tape and let it flow. I've already pulled off this one right here and I am, whoops, sorry with the finger, trying to do, okay, so I've got my super handy dandy snap-on heat gun and I want to even out this flow on the edge just a little bit. Just warm this up and make sure that it's flowing. There we go. You can actually move the epoxy around with a torch or a heat gun, and you do have to torch it in order for it to pop the bubbles. So I just want to make sure. There it goes. See, it's starting to drip. I don't want it to drip too much. I just want it to have enough be warm enough to flow off the edge. So I'm gonna set this down and I'm gonna pull off all of the tape and let it flow, and then I will show you what it looks like. Hang tight. Okay, so I have finished the gauge panel up here except for the screw holes, which I do need to pull those out. But some of the takeaways here. The first time I did this panel, I did not take the time to tape it all up the way I was supposed to, the way I just did it. And what happened was the epoxy instantly flowed through the holes, which is why I have that big piece of foam in there. The first time around, I just had a piece of newspaper in there. But if you'll look at this, the reason you do that is because now I have a pretty flat gauge cluster here. The first time I did this, and the reason I have a flat gauge cluster and the finish is flat is because it's self-leveling and I had it dammed up. If I had let this stuff, now what's flowing there, you see those drips? Now what's flowing is just the excess, but it's remaining flat. The first time I did it, I ended up with mounds in these little cross sections here in between the gauges. It was like mounded epoxy because it just kept flowing through the holes. And now it's level and smooth. And what I'll have to do is take a little tiny file, which I have a set of files. And I just have the cheap ones from Harbor Freight, but I have a little round file, a little flat file, and I'll just go around the gauge cluster after it's completely cured, and which will be probably 48 hours. And I'll file those holes completely open, but that won't affect the epoxy on the top. So I just wanted to show you why it's so important. See how flat that is in between the gauge holes? So it's really important to tape off the holes there, dam up until the epoxy starts to, at least the top has kind of cured. It's kind of got a skin on it. You can't touch it yet, but it's got a skin on it so that it will completely settle flat. And what's dripping out is it's just leveling itself up. You see how that's got a little mound there in the corner? You can see with the shadow there. So I might take, the one thing you have to know about this epoxy too is oh, what do they call it? Surface resistance. And so that is not flowing over that corner because of the surface resistance. So what I need to do very, very carefully is run my a sponge or something over top of this, normally with a countertop, and that's what this stuff is meant for. You get the area that you want it to flow to, you get it wet, and then you get rid of the surface resistance and it'll flow right over that edge. So, and I'm terrible because you should wear gloves to do this, but anyway, stay tuned. All right, well, the tape is all off. It's in the trash, and there's all the pieces that came out of the holes. I cannot stress enough, when you pull these things off, pull down. You have to pull in the direction you want the epoxy to flow. But look how nice and flat that is. I mean, it's flowing down into the holes, but there's no mounds in between the holes and the rectangles. The panel is flat, and that's because I filled those holes and let it start to cure, and not immediately flow out. I do have one flaw right there where it's not, I mean, you will never see it, but I can see it. I know it's there. And it's just because I think when I was taking the tape off, it just pulled a little too much off, and I wasn't able to get that edge, this edge right here, to flow as much as I wanted it to. But you know what? It's gonna be okay. So, yeah, can you see that? See that sparkle in there? That's me. And this stuff is still really forgiving. Even now, because when I was pulling the tape off of this panel, I accidentally stuck my finger in this panel twice. And then I found two flaws, like a piece of hair or a piece of fuzz in there, and I used my pick, and I took it out, and then I used my little heat gun, and I just fired it back, and it just floated on down. So there you go. Now this is going to take at least 24 hours. Look at that. Oh my gosh. It's going to take at least 24 hours to cure, and then it's going to get a high gloss top coat on it. So it'll be another, let's see, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It'll be Wednesday before, bare minimum, before it goes, probably Thursday before it goes back in. But look at that. Now, there's one drawback here. Remember, we talked about the switches, and I said I was going to go get one and show it to you, but every time I walk out to the garage, I forget. And it was raining outside. So I'm so glad I brought this project inside. Initially, I brought it inside because they keep throwing dust up down the driveway. Coming in and out the driveway, and I'm over there in the shop, and I've let my shop get dirty, and everybody stores, you know, we all store tools and everything else in it. So the lights, the indicator lights that go in that rectangle right there, have a ground strap on them, and a number of your switches have ground straps on them. So I'm gonna have to use those files, like I said, and clean those holes out completely down to the metal when I put this panel back together. But I'll clean that all up with the file. I'll show it to you, and then we'll get her put back together. But oh my gosh, nobody else has a dash like this. All right, stay tuned. Okay, it's been 2 days, and everything is dry and cured, and it looks pretty good. I think I'm going to, okay, so now what I'm going to do is, it says to sand this with 220, but I think I'm just going to scuff it up real light with maybe 600 and wipe it off. And you don't want to use anything but a paper towel to wipe it off when you get done. No tack cloth, nothing, just a paper towel. And then I'm going to put the clear coat on it, and I am going to, I think I'm going to put a silver pearl on top of this. So just to kind of, because what I originally wanted was called diamond dust. And this is really pretty, but it's not exactly what I wanted. I'll probably end up redoing it. I've got quite a few extra panels, so I may end up redoing this later, but for now, I think I'm going to put some diamond dust over it just to give it a little something. I mean, honestly, glitter sometimes just looks a little tacky. So that dark color you see right there, that's actually a hole. There's a plate that goes there. I'm getting ready to go up to Kenley and get some stuff, so I'll look and see if they've got that plate in chrome. So anyway, stay tuned. Okay, so you can see I've made quite a mess of my work table here, and I've only worked on one panel, and that's this one. So I want to tell you a couple things about epoxy and how, if I had followed the directions about 4 steps ago, I would have saved myself some trouble right now. I put on a pretty thick coat of epoxy, and it was very thick because, well, the epoxy itself was thick because it has flake in it. But one of the things I told you about was surface tension, and in order to get it to flow, I put more in. But in order to avoid surface tension, normally you're using this on a much larger surface, and you would put a wet, either with a clear or use a gloved finger, or on like if you were doing edges or something, but you would want to wet the surface with epoxy before you started pouring. And what that would do is it would allow it to flow easier, and then you wouldn't be trying to shove it around with either a stick or a torch or a heat gun. And when you have that means you'd be able to pour a thinner coat. When you've got a thicker coat, you're more likely to have bubbles in it. Even though I popped the bubbles with my heat torch, I've been sanding on this. You can see how much dust there is just from this one panel. And one of the things, now, the camera's going to pick it up. You see those little pits right there? This is why I am on my second second run on this one panel. I literally have done this already and ground it all off and started over. But these little pits right here, I cannot tell you. The reason I started over was because the first time I took rubbing alcohol and a yellow microfiber. Now, microfiber, you're thinking, oh, well, that's dye stable, and there's going to be no chance of the dye coming off. Guess what? This epoxy, now that it's sanded, the pores are open on it, and it will pick up any dye. That's why I'm saying, I'm going to say this 3 times. Do not use anything liquid to clean this right now. The only thing you want to do is dust this off with a white paper towel. I would not even trust a shop towel for this. Use a clean white paper towel and just dust this off before you put the clear on it. Now, remember, I had a problem with it flowing right there. I have been able to sand this down, and you can just barely see a shiny spot right there. But you can't really feel it, and I know you're not going to be able to see it once I put the clear on it. So I've been dusting this off with a chip brush. Just a chip brush, and scraping my sandpaper with a razor blade to keep it clean, and then dusting it off with a chip brush as well. But I do not touch this surface with anything. If you get any amount of dirt on this, anything, I'd actually started to clean out, let's see, where are they? To clean out remount the holes with a little file, those square those are for the light indicators for the switches. I'd actually started to clean those out, and the aluminum dust was starting to stain the fiberglass. I mean, not the fiberglass, the epoxy. So so I'm going to have to ream these holes out, file these holes out after I put the clear coat on, because if I get any dirty dust on here, it's going to be game over again. Let me see if I can catch a flake in there. I've got so much dust on the top of my screen that it's hard for me to see what you guys can see. But sorry this is so long, but I want you guys to know all the mistakes I make so that you don't make them when you do it. Oh, there you go. See? And then I think that clear coat, I'm going to stick some pearl on it, like Del Rey said. So stay tuned.